Leave me alone.
I'm never gonna leave you alone, ever.
You're an overgrown baby, Matthew Mullen. No one's running off onto your mummy.
Playing the Field continues tomorrow at 9 on BBC One.
Heading for the danger zone tonight, Tom Cruise stars in Top Gun at 11:05. Now on BBC One, the news and sport with Matthew Amroliwala and Rob Bonnet.
A newspaper report says Prince Harry admits smoking cannabis and drinking heavily. St James's Palace says it's a serious matter resolved in the family. A British man is among Al-Qaeda prisoners flown to Cuba. And Robson's winning ways continue as Newcastle crush Leeds and top the Premiership. Good evening. A report in a Sunday newspaper says that Prince Harry admitted to regularly smoking cannabis and drinking alcohol. The News of the World says that the problem described as severe was discovered last summer. According to the report, Prince Charles then arranged for his son, who was 16 at the time, to visit a drugs rehabilitation clinic. Tonight, a spokesman from St James's Palace said this is a serious matter which was resolved within the family and is now in the past and closed. Well, our correspondent Nicholas Witchell is at St James's Palace now. Nicholas, tell us a little more about these reports.
Well, St James's Palace is acknowledging that there has been a problem, a serious matter, as they say in the statement, but they are suggesting that the reports in the News of the World are exaggerated. St James's Palace is saying that over a 2-month period last year, it's thought to be last summer, Prince Harry experimented on several occasions with the soft drug cannabis. It said that this was always in private. It is acknowledged also that he was drinking heavily, and it is reported that he was confronted by his father, by Prince Charles, and that as a consequence, Prince Harry went just on one occasion for a couple of hours to a drug rehabilitation centre where he saw heroin addicts and saw the consequences of drug abuse. Now, St James's Palace insists, as they say in the statement, that this matter has now been resolved and is closed.
On that point, Nicholas, they're saying it's closed. Will it be as simple as that?
Well, according to St James's Palace, Prince Harry has himself decided that he no longer has any wish to continue to experiment with cannabis. No doubt his father, confronted by a problem that, of course, many parents will be confronted by. No doubt he and, indeed, of course, the authorities at Eton College, where Prince Harry is now back at school, will be watching the situation very, very carefully to ensure that there is no resumption of what they acknowledge is a serious matter.
The News of the World is saying they worked closely with St James's Palace on this. What's your analysis of that?
I'm sorry, I didn't catch the beginning of your question. Cooperation with?
With St James's Palace on this matter. What's your analysis of that?
Well, certainly St James's Palace, I think, will be dismayed that this has occurred, and I think the concern may be that both Prince Harry and, indeed, at an earlier stage, Prince William, were with people, some of their friends were people who acknowledged that they had experimented with drugs and, indeed, taken that experimentation to a rather more serious level. So I think there will be, as I say, dismay within St James's Palace. They will be anxious to cooperate, of course, with Eton College to ensure between them that Prince Harry does not resume any of this described as experimentation.
Nick Mitchell, thanks very much. The Americans say a British man is among the 20 Al-Qaeda and Taliban prisoners who were flown to a US military base on Cuba yesterday. The Foreign Office says it's seeking reassurances about the man's welfare and treatment. The US government says it's treating the detainees humanely, but not as prisoners of war. The Red Cross insists they should be protected by the Geneva Convention.
The Guantanamo Bay naval base in Cuba, now a prison camp for Al-Qaeda and Taliban captives. Eventually up to 2,000 could be held here. The Foreign Office has confirmed it's been told a Briton is among the prisoners flown to the base yesterday.
If that be the case, clearly we will have to make appropriate representations to the US in terms of his treatment, in terms of consular access, and of course because of the fear that he might be subject to the death penalty.
The US says the captives held in chain-link cells like these are detainees, not prisoners of war, and so not protected by the Geneva Convention, though it insists conditions are humane. There's been little media access. This interview was sent by videophone.
Last night was very peaceful. I would say it was calm and peaceful. They were in their individual units. There was some conversation, but primarily last night, once we issued comfort items and got them in their individual units, they were in a prone position sleeping. They were very fatigued.
The International Red Cross insists those being held must be treated as prisoners of war. It's been promised access to the naval base.
Once we have seen these people at Guantanamo Bay, we're going to have private talks with them, and we're going to discuss exactly how they perceive this, their detention time. And then we'll discuss bilaterally with the American forces, as we discuss all around the world with the people in charge of holding prisoners.
The Foreign Office is still trying to confirm the identity of the Briton being held and has asked the Americans for access. Daniel Bircher, BBC News.
And Richard Lister joins me now from Washington. Richard, are the Americans saying any more about this British man?
Matthew, I spoke to a US military spokesman a short time ago who said their policy was not to discuss the identity or the nationality of any of the prisoners that they're holding. But he did say that if any government wanted to get in touch with any of the captives, they should apply through the Pentagon. And British officials here are working very closely with their American counterparts and believe they won't have any problem in getting consular access. And I've also learnt that the Foreign Office believes there may be at least 2 other British captives held by the Americans who are in the pipeline at the moment. So this problem is going to be recurrent.
Richard, thanks very much. Loyalist paramilitaries have shot dead a Catholic postal worker in a Protestant area of Belfast this morning. The victim, a 20-year-old man, was gunned down as he arrived for work. The killing has been blamed on the UDA and was accompanied by the threat of further killings.
A poignant note on another brutal day. Flowers mark the spot where Loyalist gunmen were lying in wait for a young postman as he turned up for work early this morning, a Catholic with a job in an overwhelmingly Protestant estate. Their faces covered with scarves, the killers shot their defenceless victim repeatedly. Danny McColgan was just 20. He and his partner have a 13-month-old daughter. There was no motive, say police, but sectarianism. He was the wrong religion, and he was in the wrong place.
He's an innocent, he's an easy target. He comes to work here at the same time. He's a young Catholic lad. He lives not too far away. There's no reason that he should be targeted, just the simple fact that he's a Catholic.
In the statement where they said they shot Danny McColgan, Loyalist paramilitaries also threatened other Catholic postal workers. All this just a few hours after issuing a threat to murder staff at Catholic schools in North Belfast. A threat widely reported and widely abhorred.
I want to condemn those types of threats against teachers and against teaching staff and staff in schools, postal workers, and we're seeing attacks on ambulance drivers, train drivers, bus drivers, police. Now teachers are being this is absolutely unacceptable in society. And I think the vast majority of decent people on both sides of the community abhor totally these types of threats or attacks.
In a city hardened to sectarian violence, though, it's not a new form of intimidation. Sometimes these threats are made and never carried out. An atmosphere of terror created for the price of a phone call to a local newsroom at no risk to the caller. As Danny McColgan's murder showed, though, all too often here, the threat and the suffering are all too real. Kevin Connolly, BBC News, Belfast.
7 teenagers have been arrested in connection with the death of a 13-year-old boy in Swansea. Ross Hooper was found unconscious in a car park in the city last night and was dead on arrival in hospital. Police believe he was assaulted, and they're questioning 4 boys and 3 girls aged between 11 and 16. Moss Evans, the former General Secretary of the Transport and General Workers Union, has died. He was 76 and had been ill for some time. Mr Evans became a household name in the early 1980s when he led the giant transport union in clashes with Margaret Thatcher's Conservative government. Pakistan's President Musharraf has promised to crack down on militants in an effort to ease tension with India. He's banned 2 separatist groups but turned down a demand by Delhi to hand over suspects said to have been involved in last month's attacks on the Indian Parliament. He said any invasion by India would be met with full force.
It was billed as the most important speech of President Musharraf's career, and the country came to a standstill to watch all 62 minutes of it. The day of reckoning was here, he told his people. Pakistan needed to become a modern Muslim state and not an exporter of holy war worldwide. The measures lived up to the rhetoric. All religious schools and mosques to be registered, 5 militant groups banned, and 250 extremists arrested today alone. It was unprecedented stuff, meant to appease India and the United States.
Pakistan will not allow its territory to be used for any terrorist activity anywhere in the world. Now you must play an active role in solving the Kashmir dispute for the sake of lasting peace and harmony in the region.
In this cafe, at least, they were unanimous.
I am 100% agreed with President of Pakistan.
Each and every Pakistani is very happy on this speech because this speech is according to our expectations.
The extremists have already rejected the ban and vowed to continue their jihad. Elsewhere, the reaction has been positive. Washington has given the thumbs up to a speech which now commits Pakistan firmly to a program of sweeping reform. And yet President Musharraf has not compromised on the sacred issue of Kashmir. The ball is now firmly in India's court. Matt Fry, BBC News, Islamabad.
Now with news of football's first big test since the crowd trouble of last week and the rest of the sport, here's Rob Bonnet. Rob.
Thanks, Matthew. Good evening to you. Today's full Premiership and Football League programmes were preceded by remarks from the Sports Minister Richard Cabourn that some in the sport had become a little complacent about the kind of hooliganism that disfigured last Sunday's cup tie at Cardiff, and that they should not take their foot off the pedal. Cardiff were at home today to Peterborough in the second division, a game which passed off without incident. Pamphlets were distributed amongst the fans in which they were urged to behave correctly. But the club's owner, Sam Hammam, also wrote that Cardiff had no case to answer in relation to last weekend's trouble. Well, in the Premiership, the game of the day had significant bearing on the top of the table. The winners of Newcastle versus Leeds would be tonight's leaders, and it was Newcastle who carried the day with a 3-1 victory. Leeds' Alan Smith scored after just 28 seconds the Premiership's quickest goal of the season, but Kieran Dyer's first goal for a year helped Newcastle to their win. Meanwhile, Ipswich faced Tottenham at Portman Road and continued their revival. They won 2-1, their 5th success in 6 games. Gus Poyet gave Spurs hope with a second-half equaliser, but John McGreal got a late winner. Elsewhere, Villa beat Derby, Blackburn beat Charlton, Chelsea drew at Bolton, Everton squeezed past Sunderland, Fulham beat Middlesbrough, and West Ham's Paolo Di Canio got the game's only goal against Leicester. All of which left the Premiership's top 6 like this. Newcastle 1 point clear of Leeds, but wins tomorrow for Manchester United at Southampton or for Arsenal against Liverpool will take either of them above Newcastle. Chelsea stays 6th. Ipswich were the only side in the bottom 6 to win, a result that moves them above Derby. Otherwise, the positions remain the same. Celtic have regained their 13-point lead at the top of the Scottish Premier League this evening with a 2-0 win at Kilmarnock. John Hartson successfully replaced Henrik Larsson as Celtic's penalty taker. The Swede had stepped aside through lack of confidence, and Celtic's second came from this individual effort from Paul Lambert. Both goals in the second half. Earlier, there'd been home wins for Dundee, Hearts, Motherwell and second-place Rangers, who are now 11 points clear of third-place Livingston. Dunfermline won at St Johnstone. In Rugby Union's Heineken Cup, Llanelli are through to the quarter-finals after beating the current European champions Leicester. Stephen Jones kicked Llanelli into the next phase with 8 penalties in their triless 24-12 victory. Leicester's 11-match winning run is therefore over, but they'd already qualified for the last 8. Cardiff, though, are out after defeat at Northampton. Greg Rosetsky will go into the Australian Tennis Open on Monday in confident mood after winning the New Zealand Open in Auckland. Britain's number 2 fought back from a set down to beat the Frenchman Jérôme Golmar 6-7, 6-4, 7-5.
It had been a rain-interrupted match, and it appeared that Greg Rosetsky was the player finding it hard to keep his concentration. He lost the first set to Jérôme Golmar on a tie-break, in which he failed to win a single point. But as the weather improved, so did Rosetsky, breaking serve to take the second set. In front of what at times looked like a home crowd, the British player held his nerve in a tight third set. Fittingly, an ace secured him the title. It was the perfect warm-up ahead of the Australian Open.
Always enjoy it here. Get the great British support always. It helps when they're screaming a little bit, and it gives me a bit of an edge, so I like it.
The form of Rosetsky and Tim Henman has made the top two British players serious contenders in next week's tournament. Daniela Ralph, BBC News.
And finally, Mervyn King and Tony David will contest the final of tomorrow's Embassy World Darts Championship after semi-final victories today. That's it, Matthew.
Rob, thanks very much. Well, the main news tonight, Prince Harry is reported by a Sunday newspaper to have regularly drunk alcohol and experimented with cannabis. St James's Palace said tonight the matter was resolved within the family and was now closed. And Britain is among the Al-Qaeda captives being held on a US base in Cuba. Well, that's the latest. There were news throughout the night over on BBC News 24. But from us, good night.
Prime Minister Tony Blair joins David Frost for breakfast tomorrow morning on BBC One from 9.
Hello, good evening. The weather is turning more unsettled over the next few days. Looking out into the Atlantic, you can see we've got bands of cloud. They're queuing up and they're all heading our way. This first one bringing some patchy rain tonight, the next one tomorrow, and behind me, some more rain waiting to come in for Monday. At least, though, it is turning milder, rather slowly. It will be frost-free tonight, temperatures of 4 or 5 degrees at the very lowest, but pretty windy across many areas, particularly in the north and the west. Also a little rain coming in courtesy of this weather front. It'll be light and patchy. Some places may well stay dry. Some more rain just sneaking into the west towards the end of the night. A cloudy night, a cloudy day again tomorrow as well. Some brief brighter spells developing for a time across some eastern parts of the country. But then remember, we've got this band of cloud and rain in the west. That'll slowly edge its way towards the east. Brighter weather following in turn, eventually, particularly for Northern Ireland. It will be a breezy day for us all, I think, during tomorrow, but mild, 9 to 11 degrees. And it stays mild during Monday as well. Again, we see some more wet and windy weather, particularly for the northwest. The band of cloud and rain only slowly pushing down towards the southeast and then clearing away. And then brighter, cooler air comes in. Some sunshine, especially for eastern areas. Showers out to the west and the northwest. Most of us dry, though, by the middle of the week. That's it. Goodbye.
Now on BBC One, tonight's lottery results. In the National Lottery draw, the winning numbers are confirmed as 1, 3, 11, 12, 20 and 24. And the bonus number is 38. Early indications show that there are 5 lucky jackpot winners, each winning just over £1.1 million. The winning numbers in the lottery extra draw are 16, 22, 40, 42, 44 and 46. Initial reports show that there are no winners tonight, which means the jackpot for the next draw has grown to an estimated £9.4 million. The National Lottery Thunderball numbers are confirmed as 1, 5, 6, 16 and 21, and the Thunderball itself is 2.
The best undercover cops are persuaders.
I don't know who's been winding you up, pal, but you're making a big mistake.
Irresistible charmers.
I might be able to put something your way.
Serious players.
Tell us and we'll let you go. I'm not a cop. Shoot him.
Don't even think about messing us about. Stephen Tompkinson and Nick Berry are in deep.
It's just the constant danger of our occupation has made us incredibly close, hasn't it, big boy?
New Crime Doubles, Monday and Tuesday at 9 on BBC One.
A glittering career and a much-loved actress. The stars are out now on BBC One and shining brightly for Judi Dench.